was just in the restroom and I heard this guy say, I hope the speaker doesn't suck. I hope you'll enjoy the next hour. I'm only kidding, he's a friend of mine. I'm Terry Lobo, I'm an alcoholic. It's great to be here. And happy anniversary for the Mention Group, 14 years. Yeah, I come up here once in a while, and I always love the Friday night meeting, and I've asked me to share before, so I really do like this group. It's by God's grace, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, a great sponsor, good friends in the 12 steps. I haven't had to pick up a drink or do any crazy stuff since the 30th of June, 1995, and for that I'm extremely grateful. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, and I'm going to take this torch out. Sandy Beach always told me, don't overstep your welcome, so always welcome the clock here. I grew up in India, if you haven't figured it out yet. I lived there till I was 19, and I grew up in Bombay. I grew up 2 miles from the Arabian Sea, great place to grow up. That's where the big film industry is in India. I had a good life. We weren't super rich, but we were medium rich, somewhere in there. I have, 4 sisters, close family. My mom and dad have passed away now, but we had a close family. And I had everything growing up as a kid. None of my immediate family are alcoholics. When I look back, what I was a spoiled brat. I pretty much had everything a kid my age, that ever. I had everything, and I needed for nothing. I went to the best schools, and since it's such a big film industry in the town that I grew up, I went to school with some of the directors' kids, and it was really cool. But being an alcoholic, right from the very start, I always felt there was something missing in my life. Even though I had everything, I always felt there was a big hole in me. This is way before I knew what alcohol was. I always felt one step behind the rest of the world. And I remember, the rest of us rode our bicycles to school, and I was close enough so we walked. And I used to see these directors' kids getting driven, chauffeur driven to school, and the chauffeur gets around, opens the door for them, and this little punk gets out, and I'm just resentful. I'm resentful. We call it a spiritual malady in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're right in the middle of everything that's right, and all we find is something wrong with our life. And right from that young age, before I even knew what alcohol was, I'm wishing I had different parents. I'm wishing that I had their parents. And I just started blaming India for all my issues. I don't know if anyone has this, but I think I'm the only guy who has a whole country on his inventory. But yeah, so I'm hating India, right? How do you tell your parents that you're feeling irritable and discontent when you're 5 years old? They're going to tell you, hey, you've got everything. What do you need as a kid? I've always had a great relationship with God. And I remember when I was a kid, the school I went to had a big church attached to it. I remember sitting down in church and just praying to God and asking, what's wrong with me? What is wrong with me? I have everything, and yet I'm so I just feel one step behind the rest of the world. It took me coming into Alcoholics Anonymous to find out that that's what we call a spiritual malady, alcoholism. And I picked up, at about 14 years old, I picked up my first drink. My dad had this little bar, and he used to open up a bottle of wine at Christmas time and give us a little shot, and then put that cork back, and the next time he opened it was for Easter. And between Christmas and Easter, I used to start changing wine into water. And come Easter time, my dad used to open that bottle and go, take a little sip of it and go look at my mom and say, Joyce, I think this is a bad bottle of wine. I remember when I picked up my first drink, I took a sip of that wine and it went down and it came up. And for once in my life, I felt absolutely normal. For once in my life, that hole in me was filled. I felt right, and when that happens, you found yourself a solution, And I just started chasing that solution. And I always like to say this, but for the longest time, the people we hurt in our lives are the people closest to us. When we are out there doing our things. And I hurt my family. I started stealing from them. I started stealing their jewelry and all their stuff just to sell it so I could have some money to go do my stuff. And when I came to AA and I started looking back, I had so much to look at because, there were times, I'm sure, my parents just stayed up at night just wondering where their kid was, And I'm out there. And, from the ages of 15 through to about 18, I'm just crazy. I'm just doing my stuff. And my parents don't know what to do with me. They were really simple, good folks. They didn't know what to do. And they figured if they took me out of the whole situation, everything would be fine. And my dad did what good parents do. He probably spent money he didn't have. And he said, hey, do you want to go to the U.S. to study? I was waiting for that opportunity because now I knew everything would be okay. I was getting away from a country that I absolutely hated at that time, which is false. But I just welcomed it. I said, absolutely. And I came to the U.S. when I was 19 years old to study. And thank God, I've been pretty good at my studies all along. That's served me well. But I came here, there was no parental supervision. I was getting all this money from India. And of course, like a good alcoholic, I don't know about you guys, if I'm going to pick a roommate, I intuitively pick another alcoholic. And so I'm staying with these two guys. I'm paying their rent. I'm paying their girlfriend's rent. They're really happy. I mean, this guy from India is getting all this cash, and it was really bad, and things just didn't improve for me at all. And there's a portion in the big book that explained, in the doctor's opinion, that explained my problem to me. And I used to go to school in the morning. At 5 o'clock in the evening, I used to come home. My roommates used to ask me, hey, you want to go for a couple? And I say, sure. And the next thing I know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know how I got there. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I come home. I have to go to school the next day. And I go through those phases, the remorsefulness and the pleasure. And I tell myself, I am not going to do this tonight, right? I'm not going to do this tonight. I'm going to come home. I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to watch some TV, and I'm going to go to bed. Come 5 o'clock, I come home. My roommates say, you want to go for a couple, shoot some pool? And before I can even say no, something in me says yes. And the cycle continues. We call that insanity, right? That's that second step, that I forget what happened to me the night before and I go out and pick up another drink. But I didn't know that was what's going on with me. And meanwhile, I'm going to school with all these other guys, right? They're from all over the world. I was going to school with guys from Iran and Iraq and Portugal. And we used to have such a good time, and I really, really enjoyed it. We used to go out, all of us, like 5 or 6 us foreigners, and we used to speak, pretend we couldn't speak English, right? And people used to say things like, welcome to America. And folks, I want to share something with you. If a person can't speak English, speaking softer and louder to them doesn't make them feel safe. And, we used to get free beer and chicken wings all over the place. It was just great. But this is going on at the side, right? after a while, my friends say, hey, we can't hang with you because we just go to have a good time and we go home, but you just kind of take it one step at the edge, over the top, right? And so I'm that guy towards the end. I was that guy at the end of the bar, just sitting down drinking and talking to himself. And, I thought that was living because I had that little pile of money, and the bartender used to know what I drank, and he used to just come and set a drink and reach into that pile of money and take what he needed. And when your bartender can do that without asking you, you've landed, right? You've arrived. But that was my drinking, and it's just all this stuff going on, and I'm taking these pledges, and I'm writing back home that everything's great here, and my parents are visiting, and while they were visiting, I was behaving myself, and it's just absolute turmoil. Now, mind you, at this time, I've cut off all ties from anyone from India. I'm only talking to my family and my sisters, and anyone else I'm just ignoring, which is crazy. But anyway, I went through that, and I'm doing that. So I was on campus one day, and I saw this Indian girl, walking on campus, and I thought it was a sign from God. I'm into signs. So I stalked her for about 3 months, and I stalked her for about 3 months, and I convinced her to get married to me. And what she signed up for was a husband who would go to work and pay the bills, and come home and be there. That was my intention. I've always, when I was out there, my intentions were always pure. It's my follow-through that I have a problem with. I've always had a problem with follow-through. Intentions here, follow-through here. So of course, getting married doesn't fix the issue. It doesn't fix alcoholism. And I like to say, for the next 6 years, those were the worst 6 years of my life. I wasn't supposed to be a husband. I was a drunk. That's what I was. And when you go out like a couple of days a week with the boys, and you've got a wife at home, and you're coming home at like midnight and 1 o'clock, it just doesn't sit well. It just doesn't sit well. So that's what I'm doing. And of course, the bills are not getting paid, the power is being turned off. We're just barely making it. It's just, what I'm talking about. It's an alcoholic home, and we're arguing and fighting, and I'm storming out, and I'm going to the bar, and coming back, and it's just crazy. And then we had graduated by then, so midway through the marriage, she told me, this is getting pretty bad. So then, I'm gonna kind of draw the line here. If you ever get a DUI, I'm out of here. Of course, the fear of losing someone has never fazed me, right? And besides, an Indian woman never leaves an Indian man, right? I'm here to tell you that's wrong, folks. They will dump your butt in a heartbeat. So anyway, it's 3 years, and then she starts telling me, why don't you go get a job in California? She was too nice to leave at that time, but she was just trying to get rid of me in different ways. She said, why don't you go get a job in California? And I said, what about us? She said, oh, you can come and see me every day. It never registered. It's true. But, so this is going on the 10th of June, 1995. I did the same thing, right? I'm out with the guys, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday in Clearwater, and I jump in the truck, and I do what I did all my life when I was drinking. I drove. And it scares me, it just frightens me the amount of times I drove drunk and how many people I could have killed. And I get in the car, and I start heading home. It's about 2:30, and after about 5 minutes of driving, I realized I'm going the wrong way, so I turn around and I start heading home. And to this day, I can swear, and every time I pass that place, I look, because I swear I saw a road coming out of US 19. And I turned on that street, and there was no street. and I hit the curb, and my truck gets stuck in the grass, and I'm drunk. I mean, I'm drunk out of my mind. And I put it in reverse, and there's mud and grass flying all over the place. And of course, within 5 minutes, a friendly Clearwater cop starts to help me. And I don't know about you, when I'm drunk, I'm a happy guy. I either I'm happy or I'm crying. But I saw the cop, and I was so happy to see him. You know, and I'm patting him on the back. Cops don't like to be patted on the back, especially when I'm drunk. And so he looks at me and he said, you know, I have to give you a sobriety test. I said, sure, no problem. This is a great thing. And I'm all over the line, and I'm laughing and thinking this is a big joke. And then he kind of looks into his lapel and says something. And before I even know it, there's another cop that shows up. Now things are getting real, right? And it was that time where dashboard cams were just starting to come out, but you know, they used to use those big camcorders. If anyone got DUI about 29 years ago, you'll know what I'm talking about. But anyway, the second cop gets out of the car, and he's got a camcorder, and he starts recording me. And now reality starts setting in, right? Because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to go to jail. So they give me a sobriety test, of course. They put the cuffs on me. I get arrested for DUI, and I do what macho men do. You know what macho men do when they're in trouble, right? They do two things. A, they either call mom, or B, they start crying. I started crying, man, in the middle of US 19, 29 years old. I am crying loudly. I think I embarrassed the cop. I convinced him that, you know, I had a college degree. I said, can you cuff me in the front? Somehow he bought that. So anyway, they hook me, they take me to 49th Street Jail, and I was terrified. I mean, I was sober right away because I knew what was going to go on. The 49th Street Jail at that night was really full. So they were doubling up on cells, you know. And they put me in this cell with this guy, and he must have seen me come. He was a veteran of jails. He just knew how, you know. And he saw me coming. He saw the terror in my eyes right away, and he came up to me and said, "You're going down, man." I can't get this out. This is good stuff. And then he said, they're going to put you away for a long time. And guess what I did? I started crying. You know, I'm crying. And if you're a dude and you cry in jail, the neighbors don't like it. All the macho men are in jail, right? Everyone's all buff and like, oh, he's crying. So, anyway. So anyway, I had seen that I'm allowed one phone call. I saw that in movies. I didn't know what the protocol was in jail, so I asked them for my one phone call. They said sure. I called my wife at that time, and she didn't pick up the phone. So I called some friends. They bailed me out. I go home, and like she had promised, my wife at that time was sitting on the couch with her bag packed, and I walked in. And she walked out, and before she left, she looked at me and she says, I can't see you do this to yourself, and I won't let you do this to me either. And she left that house and never came back. And my world crashed in on me. My one enabler, my one crutch was gone. And there I was on the 11th of June with nowhere to turn, you know. And I'd like to tell you that was my bottom, that wasn't. It just so happened, by God's grace, my family, my two sisters were visiting from Canada, and My sister takes the yellow pages. We had the yellow pages at that time, for those of you who remember that. And she calls AA for me, Alcoholics Anonymous for me, and the guy on the helpline, and then she hands me the phone, and of course I just start talking to the guy on the helpline, and I'm going on and on and on about, I'm such a nice guy, and my wife just left. And all I had was a little DUI. I mean, I don't drink that much, but he listened, and it's funny because I did the helpline, and people called him like that all the time. So he waited till I stopped to take a breath, and he jumped in and he says, well, there's an 8 o'clock meeting down the street from where you are, and he hung up on me. That frosted me. So he hung up on me. So I go for my first meeting on the 11th of June, 1995. I go to the Rogate Church on East Bay Drive. I pull up there, my sisters drop me off, I go into the meeting, and I said, oh my God, what have I come to? I see a bunch of old-timers there, and I said, man, this is not good. And I'm talking to them, and the meeting started, and they asked, is there anyone new? And there was another guy who put his hand up, so I thought that was a cool thing to do. So I put my hand up too, and I told them my name. And of course, if you're new and you put up your name, the entire room speaks to you, right? So this one guy looks at me and says, Jerry, you're the most important person in the room. And I remember thinking to myself, you're damn right I am. I mean, look at you guys. Not if you don't even have a GED. So anyways, the meeting ends. They said, hey, does anyone need a white chip? I go up, I take a white chip. I don't know why I have to say something every time I take something, but anyway, the guy in front of me picked up the white chip, went back to his chair. I picked up the white chip, and I said, listen, I want you to know that when my wife realizes what a big mistake she made and comes back, I will return your white chip. And they all said, keep coming back. And I realized, what keep coming back means? It means you need AA more than you think you need. But anyway, I'd like to tell you folks that I stayed sober from then on, and this is not the way to stay sober, but for about the next 10-ish days, I went for a meeting every evening, and I went to the bar that I used to drink at, because I had some friends who wanted to know what I had studied at A&A class. And it was fun. It was like Cheers. I used to walk in and just all get around me to find out what I had learned at A&A class that night. And, on the 29th of June, I'd come from a meeting, and I'd gone to the bar. I had a friend next to me. She was from Jordan. And she was divorced for about 2 months, and my wife had left, so I thought we had a future together. In AA jargon, I was doing the footwork, so it was 2 for 1 that night, and so I ordered 4 because I have this deathly fear of running out of alcohol. So I can remember like it was yesterday. These 4 rum and cokes were sitting on the bar. They had little limes in them, little stirrers. I squeezed the lime in them. I stirred them up, had not taken a sip of any of them. And I'm telling my friend about this meeting that I had just come from, and she goes, are you allowed to drink when you go to those meetings? And something happened, folks. I call this my miracle. And I look at her and I say, no. He said, I've been fooling those people for the last 10 days. And I walked, and I got off that bar stool, and I've never had to pick up a drink again. God's impact on me was sudden. And, we all have that miracle, right? My miracle came between, say, 9:30 and 9:31, that 1 microsecond where God's grace comes in and flicks that little switch that only alcohol can fix. And if you look back on your own lives and your own sobriety, where 1 second you're drunks and the next second you're not, what happened? What happened? And I didn't want to be in AA, but I didn't want to drink either. And I got a sponsor, Bill. Thank God for loving sponsors who don't give up on idiotic sponsee. Man, I love Bill, but he just irritated me. But I would walk on water for the man today, you know. And Bill said, okay, we're gonna work the steps. I'm gonna come there every Wednesday. Now, mind you, there were no cell phones at that time, so we were using the quarters, and I had this big phone at home. And you know, if you could afford it, you had caller ID. I didn't have caller ID, so anyone who called me, I took a chance on picking that up, right? So Bill used to call me, and I used to wonder to myself, should I pick that phone up? And I used to pick it up and say, and he used to go, hey, Jerry, this is Bill, I'm on my way. He's on his way. I used to call him up and say, you know, Bill, today I'm working late, and I wasn't. I was just lying. Can we cancel? He said, what time do you get off work? I said 8:30. He says, I'll be there at 8:30. And he used to show up, you know, and he just loved me, man. He just loved me. He knew how to hug and kick me at the same time, you know. He taught me how to be a great sponsor, you know. He taught me how to be a great sponsor. And at that time, I was trying to win my ex-wife back, so I used to call her up and try to talk to her, and she used to get really upset at me and tongue lash me, and I used to run back to Bill, and you know, he used to tell me after every meeting, now don't call her, Jerry, do not call her. And of course, when someone says no to me, I don't hear no, I hear maybe. And so when Bill left, I used to think to myself, did he say no, not to call her, or should I call her but behave myself? And I used to call her, and then came the day when, you know, the pain exceeded the pleasure, and I stopped calling her, and that pain went away. At about 3 years sober, I'd done the absolute minimum. And when you do the absolute minimum in AA, you get the absolute minimum, you know. And at 3 years sober, I was in that phase where we call it start waiting sober, right? Where you're coming for meetings, you're doing just a little bit of work, you're talking the talk, you're going for every spaghetti dinner that's available, you know, every anniversary dinner that's available, and I'm just doing the absolute minimum. And I had this emotional breakdown in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm a firm believer that in order to have awesome sobriety, you have to have physical sobriety and emotional sobriety. And I hit that bottom in AA, and that's made all the difference in my life. And then Bill called me over and he said, you know, I know what you've been doing. He says, I know there's a lot of stuff going on in your life. You know, I was going through the divorce, my mom was terminally ill, and that was really weighing down on my mind, you know, especially my mother, you know. He said, I can show you how to be a winner if you give me a chance. And the dam broke, you know, and I started working. I recommitted to Alcoholics Anonymous 3 years sober. And I've heard that in the rooms that people have recommitted to Alcoholics Anonymous at 25 years sober, you know. And it's all good. As long as you don't drink, you can always restart the process. So that's the great thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. And Bill and I started working the steps. You know, he started taking me through this journey. And steps 1, 2, and 3, right? I'm powerless over alcohol. You know, my life is unmanageable. Our lives are unmanageable. And he explained to me, you know, and the doctor's opinion makes it amazingly clear. It made it amazingly clear to me. With or without alcohol, if I don't have a spiritual program, I have this low-lying irritability and discontentment. And it's always in the background. It's always kind of brewing, you know. And it brews, and I don't know what's going on, but it's just there. And the only thing that can fix it when I was out there is alcohol. Alcohol is the solution to that discontentment of my life, you know. And for many, many years, I didn't drink because I wanted to. I drank because I couldn't stand the way I felt when I didn't drink. You know, we call it alcoholism. The ism, the spiritual malady, using alcohol to fix that hole within me. And then, of course, since I have this amazing relationship with God, you know, steps 2 and 3 were relatively easy for me. And if you're struggling with the God stuff, don't. You know, it's okay. It's okay to surrender. It's okay to pray to someone that you don't know or anything that you don't have contact with. And I usually suggest it's okay to get down on your knees and pray for something you don't believe in yet, because that's something will find you, you know. And when you surrender to God, you know, you get out of the way, and suddenly one morning you're going to wake up, and you're going to feel warm and fuzzy inside, and for once in your life, that God that's always been in you will show itself, will show himself or herself or whatever you believe in. And that's what surrender does, you know. Surrender is a decision to do things someone else's way because our way is not working, you know. And we get to do that in AA, and I had to do that all along. Because sometimes, most of the time, in Alcoholics Anonymous, I do things my way, and I get to a point where I have to surrender in order to let God's grace come through me, and then I start doing the work. And so I have this great relationship with God, and I go on to this journey for steps 4 through 9. And, you know, and I think the meat of this program is steps 4 through 9, where we get to be okay with ourselves, with God, and with the world. And that's what a spiritual person is, right? Steps 4 and 5 get me okay with me. Step 6 and 7 get me okay with God. And step 8 and 9 get me okay with the world. And that's a spiritual person to me who's in harmony with myself, with God, and with everyone around me. And I started writing my inventory, you know, and I just want to remind you, India was right there. That was it was always right there, the whole country. And I wrote that inventory, and I wrote all the fears and all the all the sex inventory, and you know, a lot of uproar in my life were around women and relationships, you know. And I had to find out not why I had that 20 relationships, is why I had that one relationship 20 times. Because if you don't find out why you're doing that stuff, you keep repeating it sober. And you know, if you find yourself going through relationship after relationship, go back and reset. You know, do that inventory. It's so important. And Bill went through that inventory with me, and I shared that stuff with him, and he showed me, and we came up with that fourth column. What should I have done instead? Right? The big book talks about it. And what we should have done instead is our marching orders for life after that. And you know, I wrote that down. It was very refreshing. And then we went to the 6th and 7th step. I had all my character defects pretty much listed from my 4th step, and I put them down my 6th step. And you know, we got on my knees. We asked God to remove them. It takes a lot of work, right? I love steps 6 and 7 because 6 and 7 are right in the middle of the steps. At any given time, I'm either moving towards step 1. Doesn't necessarily have to be picking up a drink, but I can go crazy really easy, or I'm moving up to step 12, which is spiritual awakening. So I think steps 6 and 7 are really, I think they're the most important steps to me. And so I try to be aware of my shortcomings, try to work on them. And then I did step 6 and 7, wrote it down. And step 8 and 9, I came to step 8 and 9. I had a bunch of stuff on my 8 and 9 list. On the top of my list was my mom and dad and my family. And out of all the amends that I made, and this chokes me up, out of all the amends that I made in my life, my amends to my parents was like far the best. And my mom was sick at that time. She was terminally ill. And they hadn't given her much to live. And Bill comes to me and said, it's time to go back home. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you need to make amends. You know, he said, when you signed up to this deal, you signed up to go to any length. He said, I would like you to go back to India and make amends. And I was really afraid. I came up with every excuse in the book, you know. He said, I don't have the money. He said, I'll pay for it. I don't have the time off from work. He said, I'll call your boss. He took out every excuse from me, And I took that long trip to India and to make amends, but I got a sidetracked here because I want to tell you the story. And I went to Miami. To go to India, and I was in Miami. Had a connecting flight, and I missed my flight, and I was freaking out. Not because I wanted to drink, but I was that's what I do. I was just freaking out. And if you're in Miami and you look like me, people are going to talk Spanish to you. So people are talking Spanish to me, I'm trying to understand them, I'm trying to tell them, and there's all this stuff going on, and I call Bill, and I'm trying to explain the stuff of what a situation I'm in. I've missed my connecting flight, and I want to fill in like 1 hour's worth of conversation in like 5 seconds. And I'm just hammering him, and then he said, "Why don't you call AA?" I had never thought about that. And this is a story that touched my life, and I'll never forget it. So I call Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, this Cuban guy picks up the phone. He goes, "Hi, this is Jose. Can I help you?" This is Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, "Hi, Jose. This is Jerry. I just missed my flight." He says, "Calm down." He says, "I'm going to come and pick you up." He says, "He told me where to stand in Miami Airport." He says, "Stand outside, and I'll be there shortly." I said, "How will I recognize you?" He said, "Don't worry, I'll recognize you." So I'm standing there. I'm chain smoking at that time, because I'm so nervous. And then in the distance, I hear the salsa music. And this big tuna boat just pulls up right in front of me. This low rider pulls up and right in front of me. He rolls down his window, and I see this Cuban guy there. He had this tank top. He was ripped. He had beautiful hair, nice mustache. What he looked like was a cross between a member of a drug cartel and a porn star. He was beautiful, man. That's all I can say. I wish I had his hair. He looked like Yanni. So anyway, he rolls down the window. He looks at me, and with one finger he calls me over. Right? He beckons me over, and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, I'm going to get shot." It's like AA member in need gets shot at Miami. So he puts out his hand and he said, "Are you Yeri?" I said, "Yes, I'm Yeri." And he said, "I'm Jose." He says, "Come on in." And I got into his car, and we just, with salsa music blaring, we just drove off into the sunset. But this is what I want to tell you about the altruistic thing about Alcoholics Anonymous. He didn't know me from Adam. But he came out there, he made that drive to Miami Airport to help me. He took me for a meeting, he took me to a halfway house to stay the night. He came by the next morning and he dropped me off at the airport. I left Miami wanting to be like Jose, just because he had touched my life. And I often ask myself, if someone called me from Tampa Airport, would I drop everything and go in? And I ask myself that. And but anyway, so I get to India. on this amends, and I go into that room, and I sit down with my mom, and she's sick. She's really sick, and I made amends to mom. You people told me how to do that, and she hugged me, man, and she hugged me. It was just for a second, but it felt like an eternity. I had treated them so badly, and that amends that I made, just lightened the load within me. And my mom and dad were amazing people. They were so sweet and good people. And my mom wrote a letter to Bill. She wrote a letter to Bill, and in more words than one, she said, "Thank you for taking care of my boy." A mother's love, man. There's nothing like it, And I came home from India because I made my amends, and I felt lighter. I had some student loans that I thought were a gift. Bill explained to me the difference between a gift and a loan. I wrote out a check for about 5 years every month, man, $100, paying off that loan, but it's a great feeling when you pay them all off. I did that, and when my mom and dad died, a piece of me died. Mom passed away shortly after. I'm so glad Bill made me go and make amends. I don't know how I would have processed it since, And if you're waiting for someone to reach out to you to make amends, don't. Pray about it, and the direction will come. Make those amends. It's amazing. I'm a good son today. Mom and dad are gone, but what I do every time I go back to India, I go to this little cemetery, and it's a cemetery you guys will never ever know about. It's St. Anthony's Cemetery in Bombay, and Mom and Dad are there. And I go there, and I clean out their grave, and I say a little prayer, and I put my medallion for that year in the ground, a gift from Alcoholics Anonymous. And right now, today, my 4-year, my 13-year, and my 23-year medallion is in the ground right next to their grave. It's an amazing thing, I've come full circle. Every morning when I wake up, I hit my knees and I say that third step prayer. I've been saying that since almost day one. And then I do my meditation, step 11. And meditation has been the biggest thing for me, not only to calm myself down and prep me for the day, but it's to give me that conscious contact with God. We have a line in our promises that say, we will intuitively know how to handle situations that get stuck with us. And, that intuitiveness, for me, comes from being aware of the presence of God within. And so when the beat's on and I'm about to stick my foot into my mouth, I listen to that small, still voice, that small, still voice that's always speaking to me, And I get it by just being silent. Meditation is amazing, and it's totally up to you how you get there. I know we talk about a sunlit beach and walking in the park, whatever works for you to get to a place where your higher power is. That's what you need to do. And I do that every day, and I feel centered. And then I go out, and I can mess things up, but I can always start again. That's the beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've got tools that let me start my day over again. I can make amends. I can forgive. It's amazing. I came up to step 12. I came up to step 12, and I think the most sacred thing that we can do in Alcoholics Anonymous is service and sponsoring. There's a fine line we all cross in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's from being takers to givers. And I don't know when that happened for me, but it did. And that's made all the difference in my life, And I sponsor these guys, and we go through the steps, and it's sacred. To be able to sit down with a guy or a girl and just do these steps. There's something very, very sacred about that. And, we each share our stuff, and, we move forward with it. I truly believe my life is a walk back to God today. It really is. And as I walk back to God, I bring someone with me. And as they walk back to God, they bring someone with them. And if you can visualize, it's a long line of us just walking back to God. All because of Alcoholics Anonymous and sobriety. I've got one quick story, or one miracle I want to share with you before I let you go. I talked about this resentment I had against India, right? And I talked about it, and I wrote it down, and I processed it. But 15 years still, where I still had this knot within me, and I didn't know how to shake it. There was so much regret and so much, I just didn't know how to get past it. I was okay with India, but that regret was still there about all those years I wasted hating a country. And I prayed about it, and if you're struggling with something, just keep praying about it, and the solution shows up. So it was 2012. I've been struggling with this in deep in my soul. It was 2012. I got a call from central office. It was Buzz. Buzz used to work there. And he said, "Hey, Jerry, this is Buzz." I said, "Hey, Buzz, what's going on?" He said, "Listen, I got a call on the helpline from this guy, and he sounds like he's Indian. Sounds like he's Indian." Folks, not for 1 second did I ever think that was profiling. So he said, "Yeah, he sounds like he's from India." I said, "Oh, cool." I said, "Can you give me his number?" So he gave me his number, and I looked at the number. It wasn't a local number. So cheapo me, I'm thinking about, man, if I call this dude in India, it's going to be like $50. So, but I called the number, right? I called the number. This guy picks up the phone. He said, "Hey, this is Vinny." I said, "Hey, Vinny, this is Jerry. I'm calling you from Clearwater, Florida. How's it going?" And that 5-minute conversation turned into 2 hours. You know, and he said, "Hey, thanks for calling me back." I said, "What happened? How do you call central office in Clearwater, Florida?" Because, you know, India, where he is in that city, is amazing AA. There's AA all around. He said, "Listen, I've been sober." He told me in October. He says, "I've been sober since April." He says, "I've been attending these meetings. I just can't stand it." He said, "I don't know what to do." He said, last night I was up on my roof and I wanted to end it all, you know, and he said, I wanted to jump off 6 months sober, right? He wanted to end it all. And he said, something told me, he said, before I jumped off, I hit my knees and I started praying. And he said, something told me to call Alcoholics Anonymous randomly. So he started Googling and just calling Alcoholics Anonymous all over the world. And he got Pinellas County Central Office. Now look at the way God works. He got Pinellas County Central Office. Pinellas County Central Office got me, a man who had that little nod in him about India. So we're talking this, and he said, and I had gone on some